Hi there, this is Jacob Nash, and this is a review of Module 74, Attribution, Attitudes, and Actions. Okay, won't do anything? Oh, there we go. Oh. Alert! This is the final unit of AP Psychology. I haven't had that song or sound in a long time. I thought about that. I said that I would have that the whole time, but I don't think I've had that since like module 15 or something. But whatever. Well, you need to know that this is the final unit of AP Psychology. If you're following around or following along with me in 2023, well, it doesn't matter what year it is, but at this point, I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, start reviewing your previous unit, or like maybe watch all these videos that I've made on 2x speed and make sure that you know all the vocabulary. This is just a side note, but the AP Psychology exam is not incredibly difficult, especially compared to other AP classes. This may be your first AP class, and you might say, oh, it is hard. Well, a lot of the other ones, I've taken many AP classes, and this is definitely easier than many of the other ones that you may one day take. It does have the highest pass rate of any AP exam, 77%, I believe it is, as of 2023, whereas most of them are usually in the 50% range. The lowest one is AP Physics, 42% pass rate. And I have my thoughts about that in the College Board, but I won't get into that right now. Important thing is you probably want to get college credit. You want to pass the class, obviously, but you also probably want to get the college credit, and then you won't have to take the class in college. That's if you're even going to take AP Psychology. So, I mean, sorry, that's if you're even going to study psychology in college. So if you're just taking this class randomly, technically it doesn't matter if you pass the AP exam or not, really. And I'm just saying, like, okay, yeah, that it might be useful, but the only thing it really will do is make you not have to pay for a psychology class like Psychology 101 in college. But if that's not even going to be your major, then that doesn't really do anything for you. So just saying, don't be too worried about the exam, but if you really are interested in getting a 5 on it, which honestly you should be able to do that. I mean, even if you're not going to study this in college, it still looks good for colleges to have passing scores. So I would recommend still trying your best no matter what. And I will try to make some review soon. But anyways, I hope that these videos have been helpful. I do have to say real quick, just not trying to get into too much of personal things, but if I don't know if I've already mentioned this before, but I apologize if some of the more recent videos that I've made, maybe like modules in the 50s or 60s or whatever, have been seemingly seem like bored sounding or like less enthusiastic, and you know how I've kind of been just making them at the last minute or something. Well, that's because I've had a incredibly difficult time in my personal life, but it is getting better currently, but that's the reason for that. And ultimately, I may re-record some of them if they are proven to not be good, but I think that at least I said what I should have said, but maybe I didn't include as much engaging things in them. But I'm trying to get back on track with this unit. So anyways, this unit is about social psychology, and this is just about how we think, influence, and relate to one another. Pretty straightforward, right? Now we're going to talk about attribution. What does that mean? Attribution is saying, like, we can say that this is due to this, pretty much. That's what attributing something to something means. Attribution theory is a theory that we explain someone's behavior by crediting either the situation or disposition. So the situation is going to be the external thing. So what's going on around you. Disposition is the internal thing, like just the way you are. Now, we have to know our errors. Like we've learned about a lot of different errors in psychology, right? Well, one that you need to know is fundamental attribution error. And this picture accurately displays it, but we typically underestimate the impact of the situation, overestimate the impact of the personal disposition. So we often think about the disposition in a situation. It's good to think about both, which is attribution theory. But let's say someone yells at you at your job. Let's say you work at McDonald's and your manager screams at you. You're probably going to be like, oh, they're just this or whatever, like rude term or like term you might call them that I shouldn't say in this video. Well, okay, you might think that, but you also have to think about the situation. What's going on in their life? So look at this. Let's say this is the boss. They're mad that the person's late, and it shows both people, like depending on who it is. Of course, they might think, oh, it's because they woke up late, but then, oh, it's actually because of traffic and situation. So personally, I quit my job on Friday. Like, okay, if you don't know by now, I am of pretty young age, and um, college is still a factor for me, so I don't have like a very professional job, but I worked at a car wash, okay? Now, I think that was partially why, like what I was talking about, how why these videos have been a little bit downtoned, because that job was starting to be stupid. And this is a perfect example of this attribution error. Well, why I quit the job on Friday? Well, I planned on doing it anyways because it was kind of taking a toll on me. That's part of the personal life issue I was talking about. Um, but I have this certain person that worked there that was kind of crazy. Like, I don't need to get into the specific details, but we could apply a lot of psychology things that we've learned about to this person. Now, not necessarily accurately because I'm not a professional, but I know for a fact that it appears that he could potentially have some sort of bipolar disorder. It appears based on what symptoms we know, but he's been two-sided kind of. Like he's been very nice to me, but also weird, like kind of obsessed with me, like told me I was the best person that worked there. He would pay me $100 to stay when he found out that I was going to quit. And then he like somehow became depressed. And I don't know if it's because of that, because he told me that he was my best friend. I mean, I was his best friend, even though I don't even really know him. Um, he's a bit older than me. Um, and that's just weird, kind of like. And he was just yelling at me a lot on Friday. That's why I decided to quit. And at first I was super mad. Let's just say his name is Bob. I was like, man, I'm so mad at Bob. Ooh, careful. Fundamental attribution error. I was just trying to think it's his disposition. But I got to think about his situation, which is what I figured out right before I left at the end of my shift, the final shift I would ever work at that job, in which I decided to ask him, are you having a bad day today? I just said that, and he said, yes, I'm having a really bad day. And he seemed like he was about to cry. And then I later learned from my boss that he's dealing with depression and he's having a really difficult time. Not that that's an excuse, but that tells you about this fundamental attribution error, which is that we often say that it's the disposition, but it could be the situation. Is he really a rude or bad person? I don't think so. But I know that often stress and anxiety and depression can come off as anger for some people. So remember that. When someone's rude to you, don't just be mad at them. Like if someone flips you off on the interstate or something, there might be something going on in their life. It's not just their disposition. So that's just almost like a life tip. But anyways, attitude and persuasion. So I'm sorry that this video is kind of longer than it needs to be, but that's just how it is. Attitude. This is feelings often influenced by our beliefs that predispose us to respond in a certain way. Okay. And we have two forms of persuasions that might persuade what attitudes we have about someone. Peripheral. We are influenced by incidental cues such as the speaker's attractiveness. And if you happen to take like some kind of English class, maybe AP Lang or just any English, you might learn about like, and ooh, that's not even right. Anyways, my English teacher would be angry. Uh, that's actually supposed to say pathos. I used to always get that mixed up in English. English was always my worst subject. But pathos is what I meant to write, which is that's like emotion. So the peripheral route is like emotion. So look at these pictures. Like, who do you think you would have a better attitude about? Probably that one. It's the same person, but and then central route. That's when people focus on the arguments and respond with favorable thoughts. So they kind of listen to what people have to say and then go from there and use like logical. So not ethos, pathos. Attitudes follow behavior. All right, now here's something a little strange. Foot in the door phenomenon. This is the tendency for people who have first agreed to a small request to comply to later to a larger request. So let's say this kid says, "Hey, Grandma, can I have $1?" Grandma thinks about it. Grandma says, "Okay, sonny boy." Then the kid asks, "Grandma, can I use the van?" Grandma thinks about it. "Oh, okay." That's a bigger offer.
The van.
Come on.
We want
Just for the
those keys
weekend.
just for the weekend. We'll give them back.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's one of my favorite songs. That is from my old days that I remember. 2006. But anyways, there you go. That's what it's like. You start out with a small request, end up with a bigger one.
The van.
Okay, and you know how this thing does. It always tries to replay it, etc. Role. What is a role? A set of expectations about social position, defining. So often what we might think about is gender roles. In the old days, it's starting to be not as much like this, but in the old days, of course, typically men would have the jobs, women would stay home and do more housework. But that's not always what it's like now, but that's just telling you what a role is. Cognitive dissonance theory, the theory that we purposely try to reduce the discomfort we feel when our thoughts are inconsistent. So if we're like kind of confused, like, oh, ooh, don't know what to think about this, we try to reduce that by kind of siding with a certain thing and trying to level out what we think. Okay, my computer's touch screen, but that doesn't work. Ooh, kind of a lot of questions today. Which theory states that people are motivated to reduce tensions? Oh, I just said that. Should be fresh on your memory. Cognitive dissonance theory. What factor is underestimated? Remember what I had a long speech about that crazy person. We underestimate the impact of the situation. So like for example, Bob, that's not his name, but I at first underestimated the impact of his situation. I was just like, Bob's a jerk, I'm quitting. But then I later realized I have to think about the situation. Create an example of foot in the door phenomenon. Early agreed to deliver a pizza for Domino's 1 mile outside the radius if paid whatever, and then he later did 5 miles. So the point is that that's what people sometimes do. Instead of starting out with a big request. For example, there was some guy, I think maybe a World War II hostage. They were like, "Can you deliver this bucket of pail of water?" Okay. Now give us information about your government. Okay. Like I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but I don't remember who it was, but there was some like American person, I think, that was captured by a Japanese, maybe. All right. Tendency to believe that another person's behavior is caused by disposition. Well, that's kind of the same thing. Attribution theory. I meant the same thing as what I already talked about. Um, common habit of Oh, well, number four actually, that I guess you could consider that's correct, but that kind of is the error if you're only thinking about the disposition. Um, Common habit of a person taking credit for positive events. Oh, self-serving bias. I didn't really talk about that, but I think that was on a different module, but that kind of makes sense. If we only take credit for the good things we do, that's self-serving bias. So just know that. This occurs when people are influenced by incidental cues like attractiveness. That's peripheral route persuasion. Oh, I didn't talk about Zimbardo, but has to do with roles. People once given a role may create their own hierarchies and become torturous if given supremacy. So what Zimbardo did, just to give you a little information, I think I should have included this. Sorry that I didn't. But he had something where he was a professor, and he had certain students be I don't remember exactly what he called them, but there was ones that were the jailers and the jailed. And ultimately, when the jailers were given more power, they became more torturous towards the jailed, causing the whole thing to have to end because they're starting to get a little violent. The process by which someone evaluates other people's behavior, attribution. There you go. That's the end of the module. Thanks for watching.